You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Presidential Assistant on Foreign Affairs and Chief of Presidential Protocol, Undersecretary Robert Borje. Yusek Borje, welcome to the show. Let me already ask the first question, sir. After the President invoked the arbitral ruling before the United Nations General Assembly, what can we expect next from the President?
Good morning, Pinky, and thank you for inviting me to your program. This statement, following the statement of the President, he's already signaling the opening of the doors for wider and more constructive engagement with all the stakeholders involved in the situation in the South China Sea.
So does that necessarily mean that possibly we should, or government should, heed the call of former DFA Secretary and Ambassador Albert Del Rosario to rally support from member countries as well to invoke this arbitral ruling?
Pinky, framing it that way, heeding the call, assumes that there's only one stakeholder that's involved in this. But the fact of the matter is the government is continuously involved in stakeholder coordination and consultation within the government of the Philippines already.
I see. So what is the, again, intended outcome of that speech?
Thank you. The intended outcome of the President's speech is to signal the call for deeper engagement and broader engagement by the Philippines with all the partners in around the world on several key points. It's important to note that the South China Sea issue is one of them, but also the issue on geopolitical developments in Asia Pacific and other parts of the world. So in effect, the President is actually laying down the platform for the Philippines' continuous engagement with the United Nations. And part of that, too, is a solemn reflection on what the United Nations can do to really advance the causes that it's mandated to implement.
Mm-hmm. But let me still go back to the arbitral ruling, Yusek. How do we position ourselves knowing, well, this is not new, that China has over and over again they do not recognize this arbitral ruling. They actually call it even illegal.
That's a very incisive question, but you also have to go back to the previous positions of the President, and the President has been consistent on his stand. If you were with the President during the many engagements with ASEAN and as chair of the ASEAN, he's made this clear. That the Philippines does push for the arbitral decision. But of course, China has its own principled position. But even if China has its own principled position, the Philippines has its own principled position. And it is at this time, specifically at the United Nations General Assembly, that this becomes clear, because it is, of course, the first time that the President spoke at the General Assembly. But on many other occasions, especially at ASEAN, the President has been very firm, very clear, and very consistent with his stand.
All right. Undersecretary Robert Borje, we need to say goodbye on television, but we will continue our discussion on Facebook. So in the meantime, sir, I'd like to thank you, but we will be right back. Thank you to Undersecretary Robert Borje, and thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Undersecretary Robert Borje. So, Yusek, there was a statement also made by the Chinese ambassador to the Philippines after the President invoking the arbitral ruling before the UNGA. He said that there was a consensus allegedly reached between President Duterte and Chinese President Xi Jinping to shelve maritime disputes and manage the situation through dialogue and cooperation. First, can you confirm this? And second, what does this mean for us?
Thank you again for that question, Pinky. During the many conversations of the President with President Xi Jinping, there have been references to this, but the public and the entire world is aware that the president has also said that at the right time he would be able to invoke the arbitral ruling and the decision. And that was said and that was invoked at the UN General Assembly. And on both counts, I think the president was true to his word when he spoke with President Xi Jinping, and he's also true to his word when he told the Philippines, basically us, that he will raise the arbitral decision at the right time.
Mm-hmm. And the
What,
right time, obviously, was the
if I
UN
may,
General Assembly.
I'm sorry. What it also means is that it signals the president is signaling that the doors of engagement is becoming wider now, not just with China, but with other stakeholders in the South China Sea.
And because he invoked it at the right time, which was the UN General Assembly, USEC, does this, you think, would this somehow in one way or another, or one form or another, affect our relationship with China?
I would not claim to speak for the Chinese government, of course, but I think the statement of Ambassador Huang Xilian was that there is the relations, bilateral relations, do not cover just the South China Sea. And if you also remember, that has been the consistent statement of the Philippine government through the Department of Foreign Affairs, that the dispute in the West Philippine Sea and the South China Sea is not the sum total of the relations with China.
Mm.
So it's
But it's a
how
major
do I say
factor,
this?
isn't it?
It's just because you disagree does not mean that you're unable to constructively engage with stakeholders like China. For example, for other stakeholders in the South China Sea, such as Vietnam, there still is engagement with China, and this takes on in many different forms, including economic cooperation.
Right. Can we expect, I know this is far away next year, but do you think we can expect the president to once again invoke the arbitral ruling next year during the UNGA, whether in person or again virtually?
I think that would depend on the situation, Pinky. It would have been better if the president were there to speak, but of course, in view of the pandemic, it made that difficult for the president to be at the United Nations personally in New York. But be that as it may, on next year's plans, it would depend again on the circumstances. As I pointed out in a previous interview, the urgency of global cooperation on the issue of pandemic and all of the related issues that will be discussed at the UNGA were the urgent reasons why the president decided to speak at the UNGA. But for next year, let's see.
Yeah. What was the palace's reaction to the positive feedback the president got because of the speech before the UNGA?
If you're asking about the president's own reaction, I am
Yes, sir.
privy to the fact that he was monitoring the debate, and he continues to do so, and we continue to report to the president as well in written form what happens. But I think what is encouraging is that it opened discussions on multilateral diplomacy and the role of the Philippines, and that the Philippines is not just in the sidelines, and the Philippines has this role. It doesn't simply have to always agree with what's the general sentiment in a general debate. It can actually have principled positions, and it can have a fiscalizing role, speaking on the issues of, for example, the South China Sea, the situation of migrant workers, especially the Rohingyas, the issue on climate change, and calling on developed nations to do their part as well. These are important positions that signal what the Philippines can be doing in this, the largest platform of multilateral diplomacy. And what's good is that after the president did speak at the United Nations, I personally feel that the world listened, and also the Philippines listened. to what the president had to say about issues concerning the Philippines that's connected with the entire world. What he's saying is that there are many issues that we have to work on. There are reforms that are needed at the UN to make things happen, but the Philippines is also a responsible member of the international community, willing to work with anyone and everyone in order to achieve collective goals.
Thank you again, Presidential Assistant on Foreign Affairs and Chief of Presidential Protocol, Undersecretary Robert Borje. Thank you, sir. And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.